And I'm not giving up, I'm not giving up, no, not me. Even if nobody else believes, I'm not going down that easily. So don't give up on me.
Hey everyone, are you rad for Christ? You fired up for Jesus? Welcome back to Radical Christianity, the show that highlights God in action. I am Drew, your host, and it is a blessing to have you here with us. We had a time change recently on November 5th. Anyone else out there using the extra time to sleep as soundly as Daniel in the lion's den? Well, speaking of lion's dens, while as Christians here in the United States enjoy the comforts of safety in our faith while sleeping in, not all worldwide Christians can say the same. You see, in other parts of the world, being rad for Christ is a dangerous position to be in. Many Christians are persecuted by hostile governments, civilians, and other religious groups. Believers in places like North Korea, Pakistan, Egypt, and beyond are being killed, tortured, and imprisoned for their beliefs. Others are being displaced and fleeing to safer areas faster than an apostle in his favorite car. You know, a Chrysler 300? This is why over 20 years ago, the International Day of Prayer for Persecuted Christians came to be. Now, the event actually takes place over 2 days, November 5th and November 12th. This cause raises awareness for the challenges our brethren face around the world so that we may pray for their safety and keeping. In Ephesians 6:18, it says, "And pray in the Spirit on all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, be alert and always keep on praying for all the Lord's people." So please, I ask you every day, and especially this Sunday, to keep our brothers and sisters in your heartfelt prayers. In Luke chapter 9, it says, "So I say to you, ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it will be opened." So, knock, knock. Who's there? God. No way! Yahweh. Now, tell me, are you rad for Christ? Are you fired up for Jesus? All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to give a huge, warm welcome for this couple of guests that we're having come out right now. They have a testimony that mixes together, and it's very beautiful. So, let's give a big, warm, heartfelt welcome to Nick and Katie Mojarras. Hey, great to have you here. Great to have you here. Please sit down. Have a seat. Have a seat. All right. Nick, Katie, welcome to Radical Christianity. So glad to have you guys here.
Of course, thank you.
It's going to be fun. I'm excited to hear about you guys. Come recommended from a good friend of mine. So I would like to hear. So the way we do things here is we start with testimony, and we talk about how that leads into your ministry. Yeah. So please, Nick, tell us how you met Jesus.
Yeah, so I've grown up in the church my whole life. I've had the privilege to be able to do that. And I think I've had a couple of instances where, you know, the Lord became very real to me. Had a couple of encounters, you know, just as a kid. And probably the most life-changing encounter I had is I was in a situation where I ended up in a place where I won't go into details, but I ended up in a place where I did not want to be. And I was a good kid, great kid, just had, you know, some issues just emotionally and stuff. And so at one point I basically just said, "Hey, Lord, if you get me out of this situation, I will live for you the rest of my life." And I had already planned to do that, but it was in such a deeper way because my life was pretty much on pace to change in a way that I did not want to happen. And so got out of that situation totally by the grace of God, completely by His mercy, and it ended up being where I happened to get out of the situation right as a church plant had started that my mom got involved with, and she said, "Hey, you should come and you should be on their worship team," because I'd been playing guitar for about 2 years at that point. I was very young. I was only 14 years old, so I'd been playing guitar for 2 years already, and I just said, yeah, okay, probably not that, not not that happy-go-lucky about it, but at the end of the day, I said yes, because earlier, just in our, just in our time together when we first met today, you talked about our testimony really going into how what our ministry is now today, and for me, that's pretty much where everything started. I've been in ministry since I was 13, 14 years old. I've had a lot of things spoken over my life. Even from a young child of being a pastor, being a leader in the church, being just in all kinds of things. But really, the biggest thing was music for me when I was a kid. And so I've actually been on worship teams since I was 13, 14 years old. And so there was a lot of encounters, a lot of history with God through those years, a lot of stories, a lot of great ones, a lot of challenging ones to say the least. But really, where life shifted for me into this was going to be something I do for the rest of my life, and my life really changing, because I think when you're in high school, when you're in junior high, or you're young, you have this preconceived notion that everything around you is as real as it's ever going to get, right? And it is very real. I think young people, the younger generation, the younger side of things, I think they experience a lot of, gosh, I don't want to use the word gaslighting because that's not even the word. I don't even like that word. But they experience so much emotional apathy from the people who are leading them. It's like, yeah, it's real in the moment, but you find out very quickly once you leave that environment, it becomes even more real. There's a lot more depth to life. And so if I'm saying that right, but so about at 18 years old, I had another just encounter with the Lord where I had gone through a really, really tough emotional season in my life. And again, my mom, hey, you should come to this church. And the pastor who had launched the church, we'd known him for years. He was my mom's pastor years ago. And I came one day and I actually walked into the building and I heard Katie leading worship with her dad. And as soon as and anyone who has ever heard Katie lead worship, because she does lead worship, but anyone's heard her lead probably be like, oh yeah, that would actually kind of explain why I just really am drawn to this person when she leads. It was like I just hit this, not a wall that kept me out, but a wall of just this force that invited me in. And I'd already known her a little bit, so it's kind of funny because our testimonies actually they run together because we are from the same city. We were born and raised in Clovis. We went to Clovis High, Clovis East, and our stories kind of meld together. They kind of go together. Yeah. And so I was like, wait a minute, what's Katie Tompagahan, her maiden name? What's she doing leading worship? Like she doesn't do church stuff, but I'm like, okay, whatever. I just went with it, and really from that day, I mean, we've been best friends ever since, basically. But I got to this place where I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing this whole thing again. I hadn't been on worship. I hadn't been in ministry for about a year. I didn't really take any time off intentionally. I just life was happening. Sports, football. I played football my last year of high school. Did a bunch of different stuff, bands and all of those things. Was still doing that, but just I was just so drawn to the invitation that I believe the Lord was giving me at such a young age to really know what it is to serve in His house, and not to get ahead of things in our time together, but just He began to really teach me like the honor of what it is to serve in His house and how transformative that can be. And that's really when I talk to people now. I used to go in a lot of detail, before that, but which is assuming I'm not going into a lot of detail now. But I really find that's where things really shifted for me, was when I was 18 or 17 years old, and meeting Katie and meeting our youth pastor at the time, who we would go on to know for years, and it was just really life-changing. It's hard to explain. I know there's a lot of different audiences, a lot of different people groups, watching, but there is nothing more transformative than the presence of God. It's Him. He is so much better at grabbing our attention when most people think that their attention can't be grabbed. Like he will find us wherever we are. And the Bible says he in Psalm, I think it's in Psalm 23, says he'll pursue us all the days of our lives, and he really does.
Yeah.
And so for the past 15 years this year, in ministry, it's been a lifelong just discovery of his pursuit of me and of Katie, and it's been wonderful. And so really our testimony is that we encountered the presence of God beyond a measure we could have ever imagined.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
So, Katie, what about you? Obviously, I got a glimpse of it.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, it is really tied together for us. I like that Nick talked about the presence of God. For me, the encounter that I had with the Lord was at 16-ish years old, and I come from a Christian family, so since I've been born, we've been in church every Sunday. We practice Christianity. Our whole lives were everything that typically would be in Christianity. And at 16, I was attending a church, the same one that Nick saw me leading worship at. But at this time, I was just doing the normal high school thing, doing well in school, had lots of friends, partied a little bit, all those kinds of things. But there's some few life choices that I made that kind of made it extra special between the Lord and I, to where he protected me a lot and stuff. And so I was 16 years old, and I was in a church service, and these guest worship leaders came down from Redding, California, and they, from a huge ministry out there, they were guest worship leaders for our church. And so my parents were like, can you please come see them? They're like really awesome. They're super cool. You'd probably really like what they have to say when they come and minister. And I'm like, oh, another church service. My dad was a worship leader my whole life. And so I was so used to that already, going to all the conferences, all the things. But I never could really connect, just go. I don't know.
No, I'm just kidding.
I can't say. No. But I just never felt like I could connect. I never felt like it was anything special. It just seemed like just something we did all the time for my whole life and stuff. And so nothing really stood out to me. And these worship leaders came, and there was a moment after worship. First of all, I felt the presence of the Lord in the room. What everyone always talked about my whole life, this specific heaviness, this presence, this understanding, this feeling, this, I experienced that, and I was like, oh, well, that was different. That's cool. But after they led worship, they had a portion in which they started just to, they closed their eyes and they asked the Lord, Lord, would you just help us minister to people who are here? What do you want to say to the people that are here? Use us to pray for them, or to maybe give them an encouraging word or whatever. And while they were doing that for a lot of people over the room, I just kind of was looking at the floor, kind of twiddling my thumbs like I'm doing now. And this person came behind me, and I didn't even remember what they looked like. I didn't see them at all. And they just kind of kneeled over and just kind of said, hey, I just wanted to pray for you. Is that okay? And I'm like, yeah, okay. And they, prayed this amazing, spot on, the most realist thing I've ever encountered. It's like they knew exactly the thoughts that I had in my head, the exact things that I've been tossing and toiling over and trying to figure out life, and just my own things that not even my best friends would have known. And it was just the Lord speaking directly through them to me, I know you and I see you, here I am. Right. And so the presence is whoo, that's a huge thing for me, and that's what got me. And I've been addicted to this ever since. I just want to go deeper. I want to know. I found someone who wants to do the same thing, and it's powerful. And it's let's just go deeper.
You always make me feel bad when you tell this story, because I always forget to bring in the fact that I too, when I went to that youth group meeting, they were already, so Katie had this encounter a year before we had met up again. So she was 16 when this happened. I was 17. I was still a senior in high school. Yeah. So she's going through all of this. I'm going through all my beautiful, dramatic life that I was going through at the time. And so, I came into an environment where, and really what we're talking about, and anyone who does or doesn't know, my apologies, but we came into a very prophetic environment where people were speaking to our potential future rather than who we maybe they were speaking to our potential future more than they were speaking to our definitely finite present, right? Because it wasn't like we were these people already. It was really speaking to what could happen and what could be.
What the Lord wanted.
And what the Lord desired and willed and wanted. So I came into this, and I got this prophetic word and it wasn't really even a prophetic word. It was actually what the Bible talks about, a word of knowledge. So something that no one knows. It's just the Lord, like Katie was saying. My best friends didn't know these things.
Nobody knew.
And usually it usually looks like someone telling you something that only the Lord would know.
Yeah.
And to anybody watching, I'm sure there's been times where people who aren't even believers or who aren't Christians, right, where they've someone's just said, hey, like I really just feel like you're going through this, and this, and you're like, wow, how'd they know that? Yeah. It's nothing. It's nothing mystified. It's very simple and very practical.
Yeah.
Because we serve a living and powerful God, right?
Yeah.
And so I too had this moment where an old leader of ours, he was just like, hey, I met him for the first time. He didn't know me. He just said, I just really feel like you're going through this, and this, and he was kind of like a thus saith the Lord kind of guy. Like that was his method, not really ours, but he said, I really just feel the Lord saying that this and this and this and this, and like every time this would happen, it would be like just these arrows, and not like how the Bible talks about in the context of like the arrows of the devil or the enemy, but it was very much like these arrows that would just pierce this kind of really hardened heart to life. To this point, I had become extremely hardened to life.
Me too.
And we both had, and this is something we still struggle with today, being very hardened to life. Like people know us, like there's people probably watching who do know us, people who probably had us come on the show in general. This is just one big trap to soften us up a little bit. But we're very, because we are creatives, at the end of the day. We are artists, and we just become very hardened and critical at such a young age. It was so sad. Like looking back on it now, it's so heavy. Like a 17-year-old kid being so hardened to life,
Yeah.
And I had good parents. Katie had great parents, and we both had
good family.
Yeah, good families. But it was just like these arrows that were just hitting us every single time a word we spoke, and it was just softening our hearts. So I always just feel bad because Katie always brings this up, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I walked in, I heard some girl sing,
Well, he had a lot of like experiences and testimonies that I had never tapped into to be like, oh, the God's really real. For me, I was like, I had nothing. I was like, I don't know. People just say that he's real, and we'll see. But after I get saved, Nick, I felt like that was really me, like really giving the Lord my heart. Nick felt the same way at a specific time in his life. And then when we started going to the same church together, I mean, my dad had me sing with him. I did not want to. My youth pastor forced me to do it. He was like working on our air conditioning one day at our house, and he's like, I heard you singing. I was like, no, you didn't. And he was like, you're singing this Sunday. And I was terrified. If it wasn't for him and my dad like secretly partnering together to force me to sing a song, I was like trembling on stage. Like I could sing the song and I'm like, like scared. And Nick was already playing guitar for fun and helped out worship teams before. And so our church kind of like made a space for us to like lead a youth group worship team together. That's a long story, but we ended up leading a team and teaching them all of their instruments. And of course they did their own work to be great. But after that, we were so like addicted and passionate about let's just use whatever gift the Lord's given us and just go all out. I mean, we've tapped into so many different musical scenes.
Yeah, just developing. So
we loved it.
We were talking a little earlier before the show, and you're bringing up your past with being in rock bands and traveling and things.
Yeah.
And that was something that was so present in life for us. I mean, we would spend. I mean, there was a time where we were probably making $2,000 between the both of us, and we'd spend $1,500 to drywall and sound treat and build a big huge practice room inside of a garage just so we could practice for shows that we were not even playing. You know? And we learned a lot of diligence. We learned a lot of discipline in this time.
Yeah, we were leading every Sunday.
We were leading every Sunday. And this all really leads up to what we're doing now. But I'll continue. But we led. I mean, we were leading worship from probably when we were 20. When I was 20, so we're a year apart. So when I was 20, we always go by mine because I'm me.
You're older.
So I'm older. I'm the oldest.
You're old man.
I'm the oldest, so we get to go by my age. But so from when I was 20 to probably 25 years old, so for a good 5 years, we led worship for no less than 4 hours a week.
Yeah.
I mean, and on average, probably about 8 hours a week, just in worship sets, and even and really, there was no, when we were in a good sized church that got smaller and smaller and smaller
as the years went by. Yeah.
And I say that completely unashamedly, but we were in that kind of situation, and it was just life; things were happening, but. Yeah, we got to this place where we were leading worship so much, and it was in this hidden place, right? It was in this place where there was not a lot of lights, there was not a lot of production, there was not a lot of there was not even a lot of incentive to maybe do as much as we were doing back then. It just was this passion to minister to the Lord, because we had we come from a very long line of influential music in the church world, from the Calvary chapels to the Vineyard music to Hillsong, in the 90s, and Brownsville, all the music that was coming out of all these revivals that were happening, and now today, the Bethels and the Upper Rooms and Jesus Image, like we consider ourselves a part of that, because we lean towards what those ministries are about, which is, it was funny back in the day when Vineyard was really discovering, and have you heard of Vineyard music before? Okay, so when Vineyard, when Vineyard was doing their thing, it was like, oh, we don't just get to sing songs about God, like we could sing songs to Him.
Yeah.
It was such an insane concept, because you see anyway, we could go into this for hours, but I won't. I promise. But we really just at an early age, like, man, like the Lord really likes to be sung to.
Yeah.
He really
likes to be worshipped.
He likes to hear His kids sing. He loves
sounds.
It's crazy. He loves to be worshipped.
Well, talking about Psalms, sing unto the Lord a new song.
Yeah,
totally.
Absolutely.
What is the ministry now? Obviously, music related.
Nothing to do with any of this.
Nothing to do with any of that. We're actually we're contractors. No. So now our ministry is it's called 12 Gate City, and 12 Gate City is something that we never really thought we'd really be in.
Yeah.
And even more so now, because we've pivoted some. We've stayed very diligent in other places.
Yeah.
But right now, where the Lord really has us focused out of is we got some advice, some very, very wise, accurate spiritual advice years ago, and it was actually from our old youth pastor. He said, "Hey guys, Nick, Katie, I just really, really have a sense that everything you guys do for the rest of your life, no matter what it is, will always come out of worship."
Yeah.
And not to get too theologically deep about what worship really is, but worship isn't only music, but for us, we're like, well, we know it includes that, right?
Yeah.
And so we've really took some time over the last couple of years, because we've had a worship school, we've done and still do equipping and training for churches who want to maybe grow a non-existent team, a small team. They want to build up an already existing healthy team, and everything in between there. So we do a lot of that. But really, we really felt this pull, along with another friend of ours, Ben Hamilton. We the three of us, we felt this pull to really create a space for people to come and worship the Lord. Yeah. And so what we're doing, and all of that can be wrapped up in what we now call today 12 Gate City House of Worship. And what we believe our mandate is to build a house so that all may come and seek the Lord. Yeah. Build a house of worship so that all may come and seek the Lord. And that's really, it just kept replaying in everything. We'd hear it in places, we'd hear it in things. It's all throughout Scripture. He'll rebuild the tabernacle of David when all the apostles come together and they talk about why is God doing this thing that He's saving Gentiles. Well, James, for those of you who know who James is, like he says, he points back to a prophecy in the Old Testament. He says, oh, God is doing this because he wants everyone to come and seek him.
Yeah.
He wants this thing wide open so that all may come and seek him.
Yeah.
And so we felt commissioned, mandated, we felt called, almost obligated in some way to really build this space. And so what House of Worship is, so right now, House of Worship, we have, we've decided one day this is going to be 24 hours. It will be 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Paid musicians, paid staff, paid everything.
Security.
Basically everything every church doesn't pay for, we're saying we're going to pay for. So like if you only play, it's like, I remember one time I had a pastor who is an amazing pastor actually to this day. He's like, I'm not going to pay someone to just come lead worship. But we're like, well, we are, but it's because it's not a church.
Yeah.
It's not, and I think we both know, just even from your own, your TV show, I think the evangelical like terminology is used very flippantly nowadays. And so for us, we're like, we are not creating an evangelical church. That's not what we're doing. I love the church.
Love it.
And I guess you could say a traditional church. There's traditional aspects that, and we've actually got an advisory board put together, like some great pastors in town who like, they're like, well, we know you guys want to start a church eventually to kind of manage all of this for anyone who wants to call this home, all of those things, right? Because that is needed. I love the church. I think that is God's plan, has always been his plan, will always be his plan. That is what he wants to do. On the other side of this thing, he's doing a fresh thing. You know, he is doing something fresh. He really, I mean, you see it all around us. Like people want to come and they want to worship. They really do. Yeah. And that's kind of the thing we found. We found no matter what denomination, Baptist, Pentecostal,
preference style,
whatever, preference style, people want to worship God. And so we want to create a space where they can do that freely. Even where we have a lot of friends who are leaders in town of big churches where they don't necessarily, not that they don't get to do that, it's just that there's not, there isn't maybe an emphasis on that, which is totally okay. There's maybe not an emphasis on that, but they still want that space. So we're creating that. We just want to create a space. And we just want to, we already have. Yeah. We've created a space for people to just come and worship God. And it's basically low commitment, high interaction, and it's completely and utterly open to whoever wants to come and worship God. And so
practically it's right now, because we can't go 24 hours yet, we'd love to, but we do want to honor people with their time and pay them, like Nick said, because it's going to be a real big thing at 24 hours, 365 all the time, security, all that stuff. It's right now, practically it's every Monday and every Friday at 7. And so we're renting a building in town. It's a church that we're in really good relationship with, and they use that building to do a lot of other things. But on Monday and Friday nights, every single week, we, for 2 hours, open up a space to just have ongoing worship and prayer. And so what that looks like is like different people from across town who we know and we've already had a relationship with and we're building relationship with. We ask them to come, hey, like you from this church, can you come play bass? And then you from this church, can you come play electric? I'll lead and Nick will either lead or play drums, and we'll all do an hour worship set together. So, well, electric and acoustic and vocals, but he can do anything.
I'm not a drummer.
Basically, you can do anything, but the goal is for everyone around town to work together and to provide that space together. So it's not the 12 Gate City show, Nick and Katie show. We just wanted to be able to facilitate the people that we do know now and the things that the Lord's been giving us now, like this building has been given for us to use. These friends and acquaintances that we have around town are loving the vision that the Lord's been placing over House of Worship. And so we all get to come and lead worship together. Sometimes we don't have time to go past a 15-minute worship set, for at church on a normal Sunday, because there's lots of stuff to do. But at House of Worship, it's a free space and we're not in a rush and there's no time limit. It's just an open space to if you want to hang on 4 chords for an entire hour and sing a song, and also people are coming up to the microphone and praying whatever the Lord shows them or reading scripture and stuff like that. It's just for us to worship him. And it looks different every Monday and every Friday. You never know who's going to be leading. You never know who's going to be praying. It's just that open space for everyone to come together to worship him.
Nice. And where's this located at?
So the building is the church building is Calvary World Outreach Center.
Yeah.
And it is on Gettysburg. It's the cross streets, I believe, are Cedar and Gettysburg, and it is on the northeast corner.
Northeast corner
Of Cedar and Gettysburg.
Yeah.
And it's pretty awesome.
I've driven by that building.
Yeah. It's very familiar to people who are,
Yeah, we are working on on a funding project, all these things, because we really, really, truly believe the Lord's asked us to be in a certain area. I won't give too many details of where we feel like we're supposed to be right now, but we feel there is a call to a specific area. We're really big on business, and we're huge on we're really big on seeing a house of worship, a temple, a church. We really feel that should influence culture and society. And if you look at Israel was an entire nation, right, given unto God. The Bible says, can not a nation be saved in a day? And we feel that the Lord's called a specific city to be a beacon of worship. To be a beacon of worship, to have this house of worship. It's like you are a city set on a hill. You are the house on the hill. You are the thing that the Lord's placed on this hill for people to go to. And that's just the church in general, right? Mm-hmm. But we're just passionate. We're Bible kids at the end of the day. We just love the scriptures. We love what it says, and there's a lot of cool stuff in there.
Well, cool. Believe it or not, Well, thank you for coming on Radical Christianity. We have a thing that we say here, and that is that you are definitely rad for Christ, definitely fired up for Jesus, and we love to see that. So
thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
for
so
having
much.
us. Yeah.
It's housekeeping time. Yes, the time of the show where I sit here and awkwardly ask you for money because it's totally out of character for me. Here at Radical Christianity, we operate on donations from viewers like yourself. It is a pretty simple concept. If you have $5, $10, $15, $20, anything that you feel like the Lord puts on your heart to give to this show, we could really use it for the production of this show. There are big things coming up that we would like to be able to do, and it would be a blessing if you could help us accomplish those things. Just partner with God, and whatever He's putting on your heart to give, you just give. And it's really a simple thing to do. It's really easy. All you got to do is go to radforchrist.com. That's RAD, the number 4Christ.com, and click on the donate link there. And then that will take you to the Mystery Christian Media donation page. And you just select from the drop-down Radical Christianity if you want to give the money to this show. You can give money to any of the projects or to the general fund for Mystery Christian Media. But if you give to this show, make sure you select the drop-down, and all the funds that you donate will go to this show and the operation of this program. We've had some great results with this show so far. We've had a lot of decisions for Christ. We have had lives saved, suicides prevented. There have been some wonderful stories that we don't have time to share right now, but sometime I will, I promise. But until then, just go to radforchrist.com and go to the donate link, go to the PayPal page, select what it is, put in the value that God has put on your heart to give to this show, and we will be blessed by your contribution. And it's a very big, huge blessing to be able to partner with God, so you will also get a blessing yourself. And thank you for your time. If you are also not able to donate money, that's okay. All right? I want you to understand it's okay. You can help us by spreading the word. You can share us on social media, send a friend an email, make your mother sit down next to you and watch the show with you. Whatever it is that you can do to share the show with people, it is going to be a blessing that way as well. Thank you for your time, and now on with the show. Ladies and gentlemen, you know what? Sometimes politics and religion cross over, and this guy is a prime example of that. I want you guys to give a huge Radical Christianity welcome to Eric Rollins. Good to have you here. Glad to be here. Eric, welcome to Radical Christianity. I'm happy to have you here, man.
Well, I'm happy to be here. I think this will be an interesting conversation.
That's usually how it goes.
You know, for me, this is kind of a new thing. I'm not saying that I didn't grow up with Christian morals and values. Absolutely had those. But it was also kind of mind-blowing the first time I was in a church. My parents were hippies, and I was 8 years old. I was going to a wedding of my uncle's. And I'm like, what is all this? Aside from seeing it on TV, I'm like, what is all this? It was like this foreign world. And then, you know, I was a little kid, 8 years old. Didn't pay a lot of attention to it. Though, interestingly enough, decided at age 6 that I was absolutely on the conservative side as far as politics and paid attention to politics. How I didn't become closer to Christianity, I don't know.
Well, I would say that conservative politics does usually align under most of the Christian belief, depending on how you define conservative politics. Because some conservatives out there are pursuing things that are like very distasteful to, you know, what Jesus would be thinking. However, others do, and then so it's right. Like,
there's a gray area.
There's definitely a gray area there, and then some conservatives aren't really actually conservatives. They just use the label conservative because they want to be extreme. Mm-hmm. You know, and so I understand that. I'm actually what I consider a traditional conservative. Not a, you know.
But that begins to define it more.
Well, like Reagan era, you know, conservative is kind of probably where I would be more aligned versus modern era conservative.
See, if we were in a different time, I think that Thomas Jefferson represents me better than Reagan. But the world has gone insane.
Yes.
So I thoroughly believe in freedom. I thoroughly believe in the idea that we could have a discussion and come and look at information and come to different conclusions. Now, as long as the conclusions they don't come to don't infringe upon my freedom or truly damage society, you know, big things, I'm okay with all those little things. The big things worry me.
The big things are, you know, I find that when you just dig into politics, no matter what side you align with, when you find the things that seem extremely out of whack, it's usually greed behind it. The seeking of greed and power is the reason why those things remain out of whack. Because if they were in aligned, right, the people that hold power would end up eventually losing power.
Right. Well, I think one of the crises we have in today's world is a lack of accountability. Whether we're talking politicians that can say one thing and do something else entirely, or criminals that suffer no consequences for stealing $900 worth of stuff right here in California as many times a day as they want, and it's a misdemeanor each time.
Right.
Well, if you're poor and you have $900 worth of stuff stolen from you, that's potentially life-changing.
Yeah. This is accurate. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's like what grand theft used to be, like $500 or more, you know, and so it's, you know, a lot of that stuff is, you know, a hard game because if you can't really paint those kinds of things black and white, you know what I mean? Because obviously they
are in the right and wrong,
right? Well, stealing is wrong.
But what the solution is,
right,
isn't always clear because people are not all the same.
Right.
There are some people that are stealing because they're evil.
Yes.
All the way up to I need it to survive, and I don't mean pay the bills. I mean eat.
Right.
That whole continuum.
Right.
But most people are somewhere in the middle, and there should be at least some consequences
for bad
behavior.
There should definitely be consequences. But see, instead of just so if you're going to throw out the consequences, you know what I mean? Then you should also provide an alternative path. You know what I mean? Or, you know...
Agreed, though I would hope that path would come through churches and things like that rather than from government, because I have is there space between my fingers? About that much trust of government.
Yeah, so instead of government being the facilitator, you know what I mean? They could easily just offer the money to churches to be the facilitators.
And they sometimes do that, but almost always, when politicians give money, they have strings attached. Because politics get in the way. As soon as there's 3 people, there's politics. There's some argument when there's 2 people, there's politics. But absolutely, at the point where there's a third person, there's politics.
Yeah, it's like what they say, they can't even get Congress to agree on what day of the week it is.
Yes.
Yeah. No, we don't want to get, your show's politics.
My show's called The
your show's
Constitutionalists. I do that for fun. You can find that on Truth Social, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, and on 1550 KXEX AM.
Right.
All Fresno area.
And on when it's on KXEX, what time of day is that air?
That airs on Saturdays from 3 to 4.
Saturdays from 3 to 4.
All the rest you can find
So you're right after Kingdom Talk, man.
I'm right after Dennis and Kingdom Talk.
Yeah. Okay. So
hopefully, enough of that positive energy wears off on me and I don't go all nuts on politics. Once in a while it happens.
Okay, so the way we normally do things here is we start off with your testimony, which we talked very briefly about. I like to catch it new sometimes, which is nice. And then we talk about how that leads into what you're doing, how Jesus and God's using you. So tell us. Obviously, you said that you were always Christian morals, right? But how did you meet Jesus? When did growing up with a Christian, Judeo-Christian morality?
It really did not happen till I was. And I always believed there was something there, but it was this undefined kind of, well, how could there not be a higher power when you look at the miracles all around you?
Right.
So I always believed that there was that, but it was not defined. Like I hadn't read the Bible. I was like 35. I'm 54 before I ever read the Bible. Even then, I still was like, well, yes, we'd have a better society if we lived by these rules. I get that. That is like guide rails that are actually, it would be better for everybody. There's like a kindness in the Bible, in that it's providing this path forward, telling these stories about imperfect people, sometimes failing, sometimes rising above, but constantly striving for better. And so that was really an important thing. But again, even at 35, I was still like, well, I wasn't saying anything bad about Christianity. I'm just saying I wasn't really part of my everyday life. I was very busy. I've been self-employed since I was 22. I'm running around, especially the early part of that, like a chicken with his head cut off, just trying to make a living. And really didn't slow down and begin to think about, well, what are the implications of just how I behave? What sets culture? Well, it used to be in this nation, absolutely Christianity. I think it somewhat still is. But culture's coming from a lot of other places, false religions, climate change. The idea that LGBTQ, I think that idea is ridiculous. I'm not saying, let's sleep with who you want. You'll pay the consequences at whatever point if you believe there's consequences, and you won't if you don't believe there's consequences. But them trying to define man and woman, or redefine them. And tell me that I have to believe it, and tell them it's the greatest thing ever. And by the way, they can change during the length of this conversation how they define themselves, and I'm supposed to go, oh, I'm so glad you found your true new place.
Yeah, I don't understand the benefit of blowing smoke up people's butt. You know what I mean? I don't. We on this show we catch a little flack because we make fun of the absurdity of a lot of what's going on politically with the LGBT movement. Especially their acronym. They can't keep it straight. It used to be just LGBT, then it was LGBT, then it was LGBTQ. And now there's like all these different
IA
versions.
plus and
exactly.
Well, they want you to redefine and learn your gay BCs over and over.
And they change what the letters mean too. So it's like it went from Q means queer for some people, and others it's questioning, and it's like why is questioning in there? You know what I mean? But I understand everybody's got their right. It's like and as Christians, we're supposed to be
especially
tolerant
as adults.
and love them. Yeah, especially as adults. The thing that we attack here, if we attack anything, is the fact that it gets pushed on children, and that is not okay. Because when I was a kid in school, anything sexual was considered taboo. To a child.
And now it's you're supposed to protect the child because the child has rights. Wish my parents had realized I had rights as a kid. When I was under 18, I had limited rights, and they were largely defined by what my parents wanted.
Right, and those same people won't talk about the rights of the unborn. So
So I think there's a lot of kind of false religions out there, and that there are implications because of that.
Well, what it is again, like we were talking about before, people will. I don't know if we were talking about this while we're recording or not, but people will try to get people to agree with them so that they can feel that they're right.
That was not. Yeah, that was before.
Yeah. So the LGBT movement is a lot of that. It's like we're trying to force society so we can normalize this thing so that we don't feel like we're messed up people. I mean, because when I was a child, it was, a different world entirely. I remember watching MASH, you know what I mean? And then Klinger being in drag, to get out of the army, right? That was like a running gag, you know what I mean? But it was clearly not a normal thing, And it's like, okay, if that's the lifestyle you want to live, that's fine. Don't inflict it on people that don't want that lifestyle. So since that way of thinking was the thing, they're like, okay, well now we have to normalize it. We have to get acceptance. We have to try to force people to accept the way that we want to do things to whatever extreme, and who cares if they want protections,
And I agree that there's a group that absolutely is there, but there's also a larger group that doesn't care about any of that. I'm going to slightly get into politics. I'm not going to go crazy. I believe that there are cultural Marxists and globalists that want to rule the world. And they don't care specifically about LGBTQ. They don't care about climate change. They're using all of these as a way to harness power and to tear down the family so that it's easier for them to grab control.
Yeah, well, if you divide the family, if you break down all the things that society uses to build strength upon, if you break those things down, then you have, a basic slave workforce, it's, I mean, it is the powers that, the really twisted, control, power-hungry powers that are, they're not the exclusive behind all this, but they facilitate a lot of those ridiculous ideas. They have the kind of power to squish it, and they don't.
Right. And in some cases they amplify it.
Right. They amplify it.
BlackRock's CEO Larry Fink absolutely has a perspective, and he's willing to use the power of his company, not necessarily to make money. That's an investment company that's largely for retirees, but instead use the power of his company to push a woke agenda, particularly through diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is cultural Marxism. Well, if you're a Marxist, there's no place for Christianity because the state is the most important thing. So this is where I was circling around.
Yeah.
There's no place for religion, period, really. You would just be another suppressed class because, see, God gets in the way of the fact that they would be a power.
Yeah.
And so when I came to kind of that realization, that moved me one step closer. For me, it wasn't like one big moment. It was like I started on this path and I kept taking a step.
Yeah. The sad thing is, I mean, if you read the Bible, we know how it comes to play. This battle of territory and politics and social community loses. The Christian body, we lose that battle, but we win the war when Jesus comes back, which is it's a sad truth. I mean, we can put up a fight to protect our families and try to do that, but the truth of the matter is, it's all going to go down the way of the Antichrist at some point.
Yes, but we don't know when that is, number one. Yeah. Number two, I believe that God gave us free will. Even if you make the argument, because I think that both free will exists and things are preordained. They kind of simultaneously exist. But I very much am in the category of believing in free will because it gives me focus and it makes me obligated to try to do the right thing. Yeah, well, if it's all preordained, then doesn't matter. God already decided, so I can just sit back and let it happen.
Well,
that's not okay.
See, now here's the thing, right? You actually have to look at preordination and free will as in harmony. Because the truth of the matter is, God saw everything since the beginning. He knew how it was going to end, and there's a reason for every choice he makes. For every and to allow us to have free will is an easy argument for that, and it's like, no one wants to love somebody nobody wants somebody to love them who's forced to love them. It's not real love. You know what I mean? If he wants us to love him, we have to have the free will so that we can make the choice to love him, right? But he also knew that by giving us free will, a lot of people are going to choose not to love him. A lot of people are going to choose to serve themselves. A lot of people are going to choose to serve their own self-interest, their own greed, their own lust, their own hatred, their own, terrible value structures. And because of that, the world's going to slowly spin into Babylon over and over and over again. There's a lot of different references, but I use the term Babylon because that's what pretty much existed. The world kind of got to that state before Noah's Ark, right? And then God pulled Noah to start the world over again. Whether the world was seen as a limited place instead of a global planet at that time, obviously.
I don't know that it matters.
Right, it doesn't. But as far as the structure and the story goes, Babylon people just decided to be evil, and then they would the term I like the most, that I like to try to employ, is that people began to try and redefine evil as good. And at that point, God's all like, well, I got to do something about this.
See, my point about free will is that if everything's and I don't disagree with what you just said. Yeah. You tied those two together beautifully. But people will use it as an excuse that, well, it's already decided, I don't have to act. I believe we're obligated always to try to do the right thing. And we're going to fail, but at times, but we're obligated. It gives me a reason, a motivation to go and act. And I believe that Christianity should go beyond just you going to church.
Well, yeah. No,
it should affect your family. It should affect your community.
It should. I mean, all that stuff. So let's just tie all that back together. I'm good at this. So the affecting your family, affecting your community, all that kind of stuff. If you pursue Jesus and study the Bible, then you will realize that in that pursuit of serving God, the Creator, you will learn that there's the Great Commission, first of all, which is to go out and make more disciples, right? Also, when you realize that you, like in the Lord's Prayer, forgive sins so that you can be forgiven. I mean, it talks about the Lord's Prayer, but right after that in Matthew, I think it's starting with verse 14 or something, it talks about how, if you don't forgive other people their sins, God's not really interested in forgiving your sins. You know what I mean? It's like, it's because if you're not, it says that in Matthew, So it's like, if you think about all these concepts, you start to put them all together from study and you spend time letting the Spirit work through you, and you get the Spirit in you of God, then what's going to happen naturally is those things are going to start to align, like you're saying, where you're going to be worrying about your family, you're going to take care of your family, you're going to make sure your family grows up right. Your people in your neighborhood, you're going to care about them. You're going to be praying for the guy down the street who's having a big issue.
You might even be praying for a politician to do better.
If you're not paying for your politicians, you're not paying attention. So the good and the bad both need prayer.
Well, absolutely, but I think that I consider it kind of a calling to go out and try to change my community. And when I first started doing that, it was all about politics. And what I realized was we have to change the culture. We have to make people realize that God provides this opportunity. And so I want that opportunity to be shared with as many people as possible. But I see that as not stopping. It goes all the way into the political realm, though I get you need to navigate a little carefully if that is your goal, because you're not always going to be right.
Yeah. Well, if you push back and do everything through what I like to call the lens of Jesus, you know what I mean, and pushing back against evil is necessary. It's totally necessary. Because if you just sit back and say, well, God's got it all predefined, then you're letting your brothers and sisters, go down the tubes who may need your witness. They may need your help. They may need your testimony. They may need your love and support. You know what I mean? And so the Great Commission, demands that we go out there and that we try to, love on our brother,
And I agree with this, but then why did so many churches decide that their influence kind of stopped once people walked out of the church?
Well, I would say that's because churches are not necessarily the same as the church. Okay. So the church is all of us.
I get.
Okay. And churches are different from building to building, and a lot of them are part of the larger concept of organized religion. And organized religion is forced to stick around some of the things to make their church function. Because they got payroll, they got responsibilities that they've committed themselves to, which means that they got to bring in the money, which means that they got to sometimes bend the knee to the wrong person to get that money in the building.
And the 501c3.
Yeah. Well, the 501c3 is not a bad thing.
It is not a bad thing, but it's like churches have decided, well, I can't discuss politics at all. And I think they can in this way. I think they have an obligation to talk about biblical values.
Well, see,
they can never say conservative and liberal. They could never say Republican or Democrat or independent.
Actually, they can, but they can't do it from the pulpit.
Well,
that's the thing. It's like you can like say, hey, this is, instead of saying, hey, this law, go vote on this law this way. You know what I mean? They can say, hey, this is, what we feel. This is what the Bible says about this.
But that's biblical values.
Yeah.
You just defined it more.
Right. And then it's like, okay, and then now point out how this law is, and biblical values are pointed together. You make your own decision. We explain biblical values. We explain the law. You make your decision. That would be, the way that the church should handle it without overstepping that.
Right, and I would be perfectly fine if they would do that.
Well, they
need, and some of them do, and some of them don't at all, and run the other way.
It takes a understanding and devotion towards Jesus that some of the churches. Sadly, you can't count on every church to have the devotion to God that they should.
Such a crazy idea.
Right?
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just.
it's a horrible thing, but yeah. But that's you got division between churches. You know what
absolutely.
I mean?
And they're focused on the division, not on the important things that unite us.
Yeah, and the thing is some of them want to. Yeah, I mean, you can find churches that will say some really horrific, mentally damaging stuff. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like they say, okay, well, you're having all this trouble in your life, so you must have some deep-rooted sin that you haven't reconciled. You know what I mean? I've heard that, and a lot of people I know have heard that, right? And that is something that is truly abusive, because that's basically saying that, okay, well, anything that goes wrong, you're just going to have to blame sin in your life. You know what I mean? And that's like, excuse me? No, it's like things go wrong because the world is messed up and we're human, And everybody's going to have sin in their life. Nobody is Jesus,
Yeah, plus, as you go through life, there's sometimes where suffering, and there's a lot of examples in the Bible where something horrific happened, but God uses it as an example for others. We don't know when those things are happening.
Almost all the time, that's the thing. It's like,
I wouldn't argue that. I just...
Yeah. Right. Yeah, no, I mean, God has big plans for everything, and all the stuff that we're experiencing, right even down to this conversation, is stuff that God knew ahead of time. They say, He knows the number of hairs on your head. I make a joke about that all the time.
Well, he's going easy with me.
Yeah. But I make a joke about that because God's omnipresent, right? That means He transcends time and space. So it's like I always make a joke. It's like, well, of course He knows the number of hairs I have on my head. He's got the time to count them. No. What else is He gonna do? He's got like infinite, everything. He's gonna know How many grains of sand are on the beach? You know, I mean, does he know that because he knows that, or does he know that because he's got the time to pay attention when there's a difference? You know, it's a joke. I mean, it's like, you know, I don't really expect God to be counting every hair that falls out of my head or whatever. It's just, you know, but
if he already knows everything, it's not like it would be effort. It's not like he would have to count them. He'd just go, oh,
just look. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So, you know, my journey just kept taking steps. And a big transition was when we shut down for COVID. And I went, wait, we have people that, especially when Gavin Newsom said, this is an opportunity to have a more progressive type of capitalism. He said that within a couple days of shutting us down. You know, and I'm thinking just like most people, 2 weeks to slow the spread. We don't really know what's going on. Okay. Well, when we were suddenly at like 12 days and I'd done a ton of research because COVID hit other places, I'm like, wait, somebody's lying to me. And kind of went down the rabbit hole about those kinds of things and was on Blackstone and Shaw, out protesting, trying to find a group going, I can't do this alone. And I'm thinking, I can fix this through politics. I just have to find the right people, connect with them, and help them. And the more time I spent, I realized, well, first I realized local, what matters. In other words, you have to fix yourself before you can influence anybody. There's a parable that I use often on my show about a priest that wanted to change the world. I'm sure you've heard this. And he was just bound and determined as a young man he was going to change the world. And as an old man, he realized if he changed himself, then he could have changed his family. His family then could have changed his community and building from there. And so I was like, well, okay, yes, I need to change myself. And when I began to look inward more, what do I need to do to be the right person for this job that I see ahead of me, for this mission? I took another step closer to Christ. I would say I had not fully committed, but each one was a step. I joined Constitutionalists for California. I was on the radio. I felt like, well, okay, I've kind of found my calling. And then I kept running into all of these profoundly religious people. They were into politics, but they were into Christ first. And I'm like, I'm missing something here. So, kind of next step, I get invited by Devin Tinkin. His father's Eric, who's pastor.
I know Eric really well.
Okay, so I know Devin strangely enough, connected between somebody that I knew was a little boy. Devin's that little boy's age, because I'm quite a bit older than Devin. And we just started talking. And he invited me to Holy Smoke Bible Study. And that was the place where I finally made the leap. I still go. Interestingly enough, I don't drink. I don't smoke. And the cigar smoke drives me nuts.
Oh, I know.
But I like the people and I like the conversation, so I keep going.
The cigar smoke's the reason why I can't go, because it's just too intense for me. I just...
So as a tip, if you ever have to go, get one of the low chairs.
Well,
that might your way, because
we've covered them on the show. We've actually gone down and with cameras on location, and and had some of the guys talk about their, that's right before they released their cigars and stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, very cool.
No, I've known some of those guys most of my life, and I've got to meet a lot more of them recently. Those are good guys. Mm-hmm. That's a good Bible study group. They definitely have a heart for Jesus, and they definitely are on the right track. And I love how they throw everything open for discussion. So it's not like this is how you're supposed to think. It's like, how do you think? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That's a beautiful thing.
And if somebody brings up a point that, even if somebody thinks it's off base, we're still respectful, and we have a conversation as to why. Or, there are people ranging from me where I'm good with concepts, but I couldn't tell you that it's Matthew. I just am not wired that way. Did not learn that. Not good with numbers. Great with concepts.
Yeah, and it takes years to get used to where things are on the Bible. So, yeah. So, what's the radio show? What's anything next up on the plate for you?
I'm hoping next week I'm going to have. It's running for state assembly. Why am I drawing a blank? It's running against David.
Tampia?
No, I had David Tangipa on before.
Yeah.
I feel embarrassed. I just talked to his rep, which is Aaron Reed. But why can I not think of this guy's name? George Radonovich.
Oh, Radonovich.
Okay, so
yeah.
they're running against each other, and then there is a third person that's an independent that I've talked to, not interviewed, because I think he has zero shot. And time is valuable. I had a nice conversation with him. I'm not saying something bad. It just, if you're not raising any money, sadly, that's a reality in politics, and you don't have a backing of a party, again, sadly, that's what we got going, I think you have no shot. Also, he's not a very dynamic speaker. Very nice guy. Very genuine guy. Liked him. But I haven't interviewed him. Anyway, I don't know whether I'm going to endorse Tangipa or Radonovich. Radonovich tends to be more conservative. Tangipa is young, energetic, smart, and outworking Radonovich. Radonovich is more conservative. I don't know. Yeah, we'll see.
I never had a conversation with Radonovich, but I actually know Dave, okay. We've had plenty of conversations. And one thing about him that I like is that he is not closed-minded.
No, I'll give you that.
And that's one thing. When I was younger, I actually wrote a letter to Radonovich about some of the policies, and I was like trying to figure out where he stood on it. And he came back at me like, how dare I even question what he thinks? And I'm like, but I don't even know what you think. You know what I mean? So that's my experience with him. He's been in politics for a very long time. You know what I mean? So it's
yes, he has. Now he was out for several years. Yeah. I think that's always a good thing.
Yeah,
that's not a negative for me. But he's old enough that how many more terms is he in?
Right.
On the other end, it worries me that David wants to go in this early. He's essentially done all of the right things to set himself up for this run. But
he's even endorsed.
But he's already a smooth politician,
and he's
never served a day in his life. That is slightly worrying.
No, I can understand, but he is endorsed by the seat he's replacing.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes, I was there when that officially happened.
Oh, were you? I wasn't, but yeah.
Yeah, I was at the Republican Lincoln Reagan dinner.
Yeah. So I think I mean, and the truth of the matter is, we're not. I mean, in the first, the first time that they get to run and get opposed later, that whole span, neither one of them is going to make a difference compared to the other one. You know what I mean? Like they're both going to be, they would both have the equal kind of result that would come out of their seat. You know what I mean?
Probably if we were in a situation where we were not in a supermajority for the Democrats, potentially either one of them might have more influence. The only way to get something done with either the House or the Senate at the California state level is you're going to have to work with Democrats. There's really no other path forward.
It would be toxic politics to not. It's one of the things I hate about the current decade of politics that we're in right now is that there's that whole, oh well, if you don't think like our party thinks, we're just not going to work with you. You know what I mean? On both sides.
That's fair.
And I remember back when prior to the whole before removing the earmarks, both sides had to work together. Because it would be like, oh, you want to get reelected, we're gonna fix this bridge in your area. It's like you're a different party. Come and vote with us on this policy here because it's going to help your people. And that was one of those things that moved a lot of stuff forward.
It did move stuff forward, but it also allowed for a lot of fraud and waste.
Well,
now I'm not saying that the fraud and waste is necessarily better with the new system.
I would say it's probably worse with the new system because now it's just kind of more masked in noise. You know what I mean?
Well, now I think the people that are calling the shots are crony capitalists.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean...
in other words, I see businesses coming in and using lobbying and donation dollars to buy votes.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a full political discussion that I hope that we have sometime, but this show doesn't care about politics as much as they care about other things. Well, I guess, I take that back. I know you guys care about politics. I'm just...
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not trying to jump into politics here.
Right.
It is so much part of my story, I can't not discuss it some. But politics alone can't fix this.
No, politics can't fix anything. They can barely even manage their own offices. But but people that run for office can be motivated by a movement, and a movement.
But I understand, and I want that. But more importantly, we need to be active in the primaries, picking people that share our values.
Yeah. No, I agree.
You need to be vetting candidates before we get through the primary.
One of the reasons why I'm still a Republican is people's like, well, why don't you jump ship? Like you hate these people that are running. I'm like, well, how can you fix the party if you're not a part of it?
I came to that conclusion about 2 years ago. I was a libertarian for a lot of years. Always a conservative libertarian, but a libertarian for exactly those reasons, because I have very little faith in the state Republican Party. I just see them as better than the alternative, but I realized that if I was going to be involved, I had to somewhat pick a side. It's unfortunate that it is kind of that duality. You have to choose one or the other, which makes it real hard to then speak to those people that have not decided to be very partisan.
Yeah.
That's part of that hyper-partisan divide. But the one thing that would unite all of us is if we had a love for Christ.
Well,
and there we can have a conversation. There's some middle ground that matters.
That is a common middle ground between both parties on the majority. Now, a lot of people don't have a strong faith in Christ. A lot of them will say they're Christian and not really practice it. But both sides of the aisle, the strongest movements on either side are Christ-centered. So,
No, I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah.
There are a few candidates that I thoroughly believe in, because if I believe in their morality, I realize that they're going to be striving for something better, as opposed to just professing and then, who knows, they're telling me this today, but are they trying to live it?
Right. And what kind of compromises are they going to make later on? Where are they going to sit down their feet? And it's like one of those things. Politics is politics.
And power corrupts.
Right. And power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So.
Thus, you've described California perfectly.
Well, California is a unique problem, and that is so. One of the things that, for you Christians watching right now, all right, putting your money into politics or putting your money into faith-led programs that interact with politics is a big difference.
There's a big difference, yes.
There's a big difference. You give your money to a politician, you give your money to a political movement, you really are paying for a lot of people who are just going to do more damage, But if you put your money in a faith-based movement that interacts with politics and tries to do the right thing, try to educate people on the right momentum, that's going to make a difference. Because let me just tell you, there are a lot of anti-Christian movements out there putting a buttload of money into politics. So,
now, I would say the one exception is if you can find a politician you truly believe in. I only know a few. And I am very, very deeply into politics, and I only know a few people where I feel completely comfortable endorsing them.
Yeah. Well, see, the one thing about that I think that we can fall back on and not necessarily have to believe in the politician is if you believe in their motivation. And now, if they are motivated by a money source, which most of them are, then that money source has the right kind of motivation and agenda, and you believe in that money source, then you're going to be okay. So, like, if there were more people that put money into, obviously churches can't do because they can't put money out, they can't do that. But there are Christian organizations that can endorse politicians.
Can Salt and Light?
Can Salt and Light?
Yeah, the Salt and Light group. I think they can. Yeah. I don't know. I got to find out the answer to that.
So there's a difference between like for instance, we're not a church, right? But we're a nonprofit, right? I have a 501c3.
But you have slightly different rules then.
I have different rules than a church because I don't have a pulpit. I can sit here and talk politics for all I want from right here. You know what I mean? Like crazy. I can do whatever I want. You know what I mean? And there's no tax viability because I am not a church, right? So, but I'm also very cautious and careful about that because, I do touch on a lot of political subjects, but I am more concerned about serving the kingdom than I am about serving politicians. Serving,
Well,
you know what I mean? So,
but we should be aiming to serve a higher power.
yeah, well, it's the kingdom. Yeah.
I mean, it's just that simple.
We should be. And I think that if we spent more money on teaching people the ideas that they should be living through, then the way they vote will change.
It will take care of itself.
Yeah, it'll take care of itself. And if we, instead of spending a whole lot of money on focused on a specific vote, you know what I mean? Which is, it's right now it's kind of like one of those hard arguments. You know what I mean? It's like, it's because you can't just, I can get down these rabbit holes really bad. Like I actually have a friend who is has a printing company that like $800,000 of his income in 2022 was straight from the Democratic Party, doing all propaganda, just flyers, T-shirts, brochures, just all that.
So
kind
you're
of stuff.
somewhere stuck between you need to make a living and
well,
doing what you believe is right.
He's making a fortune, you know what I mean, doing that kind of stuff. And,
So the way to offset that is if you're making a fortune, and I don't want government to make this choice, but I believe that as you become more successful, you have a moral obligation, if you're a Christian, to help those that need a hand up.
Yeah, see, he is not a very strong Christian. I think he's a believer, but he's not, he's not like, I think he's, wallet over, you know what I mean? And then that's sad. For a lot of people are like that, you know what I mean?
No, that's pretty normal, and there are stories about that.
Yeah. So, and that's...
In the Old Testament, there's some
Right.
things that kind of lead there.
Right. So that is a problem. So where people who put money, those people who are donor class, should think about putting their money into long-term movements versus into individuals. Dumping $5-6 million into a super PAC is probably not the best way to influence society for the good.
I never thought about that. You're probably right. I need to spend more time on that rather than give an answer, but it is highly worrisome that we've got a system set up where huge amounts of money, far beyond what any average individual could even dream about. And I don't see money in and of itself as bad. I see it as the power that comes with it is the corrupting influence. Now, if somebody's truly a kind and generous individual and truly a Christian, the more money they make, the more generous they're going to be. But it doesn't always work that way, because there's at least as many people, if not more, that as they get more money and more power, they become more self-centered and greedy.
Yeah, well, we're going to have these conversations more, so you're going to have to be coming back because...
I'm in.
Because literally, we could only broadcast about half this interview, and the rest of it's going to be on the internet. So everybody who watches on CMAC on TV, sorry, you're not going to get the whole interview. The rest of you do. Eric, I am glad that we've become friends.
Absolutely.
And I hope that we have plenty more conversations.
I look forward to it.
All right. Hey, cool. Hey, stay rad for Christ.
Absolutely.
And I want to see you always fired up for Jesus.
I will do my best.
All right, fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for another episode of Radical Christianity. It is a blessing that you are here with us, and we try to put on a great show for you, so I'm grateful that you attend and watch. So, there is somebody out there right now who is definitely questioning if it's time for them to make the great leap into a relationship with Jesus Christ. Let me just tell you, of course it is. And I'm not just saying that; it's actually a true thing. It's always the right time to get that done. A relationship with Jesus Christ is an amazing thing. It will revolutionize your whole world. Jesus Christ came to earth. God came in human form to teach us how to love each other properly and how to be the kind of human being we're supposed to be. And to be able to fix our own life, to fix the things going wrong, to learn how to do your steps, you need a relationship with Jesus Christ. That is a real thing. So if you're considering that right now, let me encourage you to just cross over that line. And it's not a big deal. It's really easy. You just say something to Jesus like, Jesus, I need you. Forgive me of my sin. Help me to be the person that you've created me to be. If you say something like that to Jesus, he's going to come into your heart, he's going to bless your life, and you're going to possibly see a difference immediately. And if you did do that prayer while watching the show, I want to welcome you to the family of God. And also, please, it would be a blessing to us if you would go onto our website, rad4christ.com. That's R-A-D, the number 4, Christ.com, and hit that form that says Got Saved. Fill that out, and then I will be able to send you a Bible and a little gift. It's not a big deal, but it's really a blessing to have the Word of God in written form in your house so you can get it at any time. It's an amazing difference to just having a digital version. It's really a big difference. Also, you can ask a question or you can ask a prayer request. We are here to serve you. That is what this show is for. It is to serve you. So I hope you've been enjoying it, and let us know if you have any needs. And this is the most important part right here, and that is that Jesus Christ loves you. And so do I. Thank you for watching Radical Christianity. We will see you next week.
And I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up. No, not me. Even if nobody else believes, I'm not going down that easily. So don't give up on me.
It's a mystery.